Hi, everybody. My name is Sherry Wolf, and I'm the president of Columbia College Women. We want to welcome you tonight as we celebrate a new chapter in CCW's history. We're so excited as we look around this room and we see the large number of class years, careers, and stages of life represented. And we want to take this opportunity, before we introduce our speakers, to share with you why we consider this a turning point for CCW. CCW has been a part of the Alumni Association since Columbia became coeducated. However, we're now taking advantage of the fact that there is critical mass of successful women and almost 30 years of graduates to expand the mission and the scope of CCW. We've even recently introduced a new logo and a tagline, "Hear Us Roar," which we think represents us very well.
Not as tall as Sherry. I'm Suzanne Waltman. I'm the vice president of CCW. And it's just incredibly gratifying and exciting to see everyone and see all the faces. And one of the things that I keep contemplating is why, when we get an email that says Columbia College Women, we all open those emails. And what is it about the bonds that we feel that are different with the women as opposed to the college as a whole, which we also love, of course. So just something to ponder. I want to give a special acknowledgement, first of all, to people. There are women in this room who've been involved with CCW over the years, and we want to welcome you back and say we're thrilled to have continuity, thrilled to have everyone here, and just very happy to kind of link former to ongoing. Our goal for CCW is to connect alumni to the college, to one another, and to women at the university. We're building and strengthening our voices and the leadership as a whole of women at the college. And we hope that the programming, mentoring, and experiences that we provide in support of this mission will benefit you in your personal and professional lives. And of course, we also want to have fun doing all of this. There are board members all around the room. We have tags like this with blue. Please, please, please reach out if you're interested in getting more involved and let us know, or let someone from the development office know that you want to get more involved with the work we're doing. And finally, we're just going to ask everyone to spread the word about CCW and like Columbia College Women on Facebook.
And now we're going to move on to the program. And we're thrilled tonight to have with us Dean Valentini. His presence here reinforces the support that he and Columbia have for CCW. He has been a professor of chemistry at Columbia for more than 2 decades. He was chair of the chemistry department, and he was named the 16th dean of the college and the 2nd vice president for undergraduate education in 2011. Aside from his impressive pedigree and popularity with the students, who affectionately call him Dean Teeny, he also is a tremendous leader. I've been working with him since he became the dean, and I can attest that there is nobody who has more passion for the school, for the students, for the faculty, and for the alumni of Columbia. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Dean Valentini.
Thank you, Sherry and Suzanne. And if I can get this to stay put, there we go. It's a real pleasure to be here this evening to kick off this program with 2 of our most distinguished alumni. I think there's hardly a person at Columbia who does not believe that perhaps the greatest decision Columbia College ever made was to become a coeducational institution. And I have said that before, and I would say it even if I weren't the only guy in the room. We have so many distinguished alums, and a very great organization. Use the abbreviation CCW. Long before I became a dean, long before I became a chemist, actually, I encountered CCW because CCW stands for counterclockwise. See, if you're mechanically inclined, you get instructions on how to turn things. And counterclockwise sounds kind of oppositional in some way because it has the word counter on it. So clockwise is the direction the hands of a clock turn. This is entirely a conventional, there's a reason I'm telling you this. This is entirely conventional. The direction the hands on a clock turn was dictated by the fact that clocks were built after sundials were invented, and the sun traces that direction around the shadow of the point on the sundial traces in a circle around in that direction. And so when people began to make clocks, they decided they would make the hands of the clocks turn in that same direction. That's a convention. It's entirely a convention. It also happens to be the direction you turn anything to tighten it, whether it's a screw or a bottle cap, you turn it in that way, and we call turning it clockwise. But the reason you turn that clockwise is because most people are right-handed. And you are strong, your arm is stronger in a movement called supination, which is to turn your hand out, than it is to turn it in. If we all lived in the southern hemisphere and clocks had been invented in the southern hemisphere and we were all left-handed, then counterclockwise would be clockwise and the convention would be turned on its head. Why am I telling you this? Because I'm fond of rambling stories. You are, as Suzanne said, a different kind. You have different kinds of interactions. You are, in some ways, unconventional. And I encourage you to remain unconventional, and I am reminded each day of the difference of your engagement by the letters of your organization, CCW for counterclockwise. All right. Now, I still give lectures, okay. Gives me great pleasure to introduce our two distinguished participants in a discussion today. Claire Shipman, Columbia College '86, who transferred here. She was one of 10 students who transferred to Columbia College. The other 9 were transfers from Barnard. So Claire is a very distinguished and truly unique person in the college. She appears regularly on Good Morning America and national broadcasts for ABC News. She is, as many or even all of you are aware, an author with Caddy Kay, who is now a Columbia College parent, of 2 New York Times bestsellers. Formerly, Womanomics was their first book, and now The Confidence Code, which I have read and which is a fantastic guide, and which we are using in the college with our advisors to help advise our students about confidence. Prior to joining ABC News, she was the White House correspondent for NBC News, and before NBC News, she worked at CNN. She has received a DuPont Award, an Emmy, and also a participant in a National Headliners Award. Claire also has the distinction of being the only person in history to win the John Jay Award and be the Columbia College Class Day Speaker in the same year, 1999. And as a trustee, she's sort of my boss. Our other participant tonight is Poppy Harlow, Columbia College class of 2005. Many of you will remember that I always say to you, best class ever, no matter what class you're in. But 2005 was the best class ever, tied with all others. Poppy is the anchor of CNN Newsroom Weekend, which appears on Saturdays and Sundays. She's also a correspondent for CNN. She covers many things, which range, quite remarkably to me, things from the World Economic Forum to the North American International Auto Show, only one of which I have gotten to attend in my life, and only one of which I'm interested in attending. She was previously the anchor for CNNmoney.com. She's also worked at Forbes.com Video Network and for New York One News Local Edition. She has received a Gracie Award for Best Online Investigative Feature and also a Society of American Business Editors and Writers Best in Business Award. I am deeply happy to be here today and very happy to be on the stage with our two distinguished panelists. And without further time consumption, I will turn it over to them.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Thank you guys for coming. I know it's rainy and dreary, and we sincerely appreciate it. And I'm honored to be here with Claire, someone who I've admired her work. I was trying to think of the best way to describe Claire, and I think the highest compliment I could get is a reporter's reporter. It's what I thought of when I thought of David Carr, the late David Carr of the New York Times, a reporter's reporter. And I think that's really clear in this book and in the reporting that she's done throughout. So thanks for being here, Claire.
Thank you, Poppy.
Of course. A fellow Midwesterner, Ohio, Minnesota. There's
Yes.
definitely
We have a
something
bond.
great about the middle of this country. Former CNNer, where I am now, and both proud Columbia College grads. The book is fascinating. If you haven't read it, you're going to want to read it. But basically, it looks at why women, including us, women like Sheryl Sandberg, women like Christine Lagarde of the IMF, who are so successful, often feel like a fraud, like they shouldn't be there. I feel like that on TV sometimes, definitely. How did I get this job? How am I here? Should I really be the anchor of this newscast? And what this book does that I haven't seen anywhere else is it looks at the science behind it and how there is some science behind a lack of confidence, but also what you can do about it. So the first question I'm going to ask, I was going to ask, I'll ask second. The first one I want to ask is, given the fact that, as Dean Valentini said, that you were really a first in terms of transferring here, not from Barnard, that took a lot of confidence to be one of the first women ever to graduate from this college. How did you make that decision?
Well, now's the time for my really embarrassing story, which was I always tell Dean Valentini. First of all, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. So nice to be here. Thank you, Poppy, for the lovely introduction. And yes, it would be awful to be here with a lot of empty chairs, so we are so grateful. That has happened to me before. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you, truly. Because I was the sort of naive, hopeful Midwesterner, I actually did not, and I was transferring from the University of Michigan. I didn't know that Columbia didn't take women the year I applied.
That's great.
I just applied. I'm like, New York, here I come, Columbia. Why wouldn't they take women? I applied. I got here, and somebody said, wow, it's so great. You transferred in the first year. I said, what? I had no idea, because they didn't give transfer students housing or anything back then either. So it was just, I learned it on the fly.
That's one way to have courage, is to not know that you need it.
Yes, exactly. Stupidity. Yes.
All right, so you guys write in the first few pages of the book in the introduction, The Economist magazine recently called female economic empowerment the most profound social change of our time. What led you and Caddy to write this book? What was it? Was there a moment? Was it raising your children and seeing things in them? What was it? This book really grew out of our first book in that it was a puzzle we were left with at the end of it, because the first book we wrote, Womenomics, which is, I still have trouble pronouncing sometimes, is really a look at a lot of the economic data, some of you might know it, that really shows that the more women you have at the top of a company, the top of an enterprise, the more money it makes. It's really about this economic argument that's out there now. I mean, the data is just overwhelming that diversity makes good business sense. And also about the fact that women often work differently. There are differences in the way we work. Why do we bring a difference to the bottom line? It turns out that we're not men. Some of the things we do are different and valuable, the way we operate in the workplace. And so it's really a look at that and how we could use a lot of that to be able to work the way we want to work in the workplace. But we were left, along the way, we talked to so many really incredibly qualified, smart women who we thought just would never lack confidence. And they would say things to us like, well, I'm about to get a promotion, but I'm not sure I'm qualified. My bosses want me to do this, I'm not sure I'm ready. We heard the F word a lot, fraud, all the time. Really, and again, from people we didn't expect to hear it from. And I think both Caddy and I knew we lacked confidence here and there, or more than here and there, but we didn't really think all these other women did. No, and so we started to dig into it, and we just didn't know we would find data behind this. And when we dug into it and started to see the data, that's when we knew this is going to be a really interesting book. So let's talk about some of the examples, right? So Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg, you'll also know her for her book, Lean In. She spoke with you guys.
Just a little book.
Just a little book.
little book, Lean In.
And she said, quote, "There are still days when I wake up feeling like a fraud, not sure I should be where I am." And this ties into the research from Wellesley College that Peggy McIntosh did, right? The fraud syndrome.
Right.
So tell us about the science behind it, and then why on earth someone like Sheryl Sandberg would be affected by it.
Well, we found, all right, so
I think the most powerful data we found is best illustrated in a kind of goofy job description that Caddy and I have made up. So bear with me for a moment, which is, I don't know how many of you have heard this joke. It's a joke about what if the 3 wise men had been 3 wise women and they would have arrived on time and brought useful gifts, like diapers or something, right? So we've taken this and ripped it apart and turned it into our own story, which is, say there's a job description for the 3 wise men. And in that job description is you have to have great navigational skills, you have to be great with mothers and new babies, good at astronomy, and have a keen sense of Middle East protocol. And there are a couple of people looking at this job. Bob is one of them, and he thinks to himself, well, great navigational skills. There's GPS, I'll be fine. Mothers and new babies, I've changed diapers. How hard can it be to look at the stars? And Middle East protocol, well, you know, I don't know, I'll just bring a bottle of whiskey along to whatever it is. It'll be fine. I'm applying for the job. But Bethany, or all of us, look at the job, women, look at the job and think, well, navigational skills, I mean, I lived in Cairo and Tokyo and found my way around, but I wouldn't say I'm good at navigating. Mothers and new babies, yes, I'm a mother, I'm good at that. Astronomy, absolutely not. And a keen sense of Middle East protocol, well, I have that master's in Arabic from Columbia, but I wouldn't say that makes me an expert at all. So I'm not going to apply for the job. And that's essentially, that's what we found out is happening. And there's interesting data. Hewlett-Packard has some internal data. Other companies do that show that.
We'll talk about the HP data, because I think that's.
Women will apply. Apparently, they found that women will apply for a job or promotion when we feel we have roughly 100% of the qualifications.
And men.
60%. And so, and then usually people murmur and they're thinking, oh, well, those crazy men. But in fact, the men have it right, because the men are willing to take a chance. They figure they're going to learn on the job. And I think it's not all about promotions, but it's about that mindset. What we found is that we are constantly judging our abilities. We're off in the way we judge our ability, whether we're ready to participate in a meeting, whether we're ready to turn in the next paper, whether we're ready to send something out to be published, whatever it is, when we're judging ourselves, we're usually judging ourselves not ready. And you can imagine that that adds up over the course of a career. And so I think that's the data that underlies this sense of being a fraud.
What about for you personally? Because I said it at the Open, I certainly have felt, I mean, I just got this new job as the anchor of the show, and half the time I get on set and I can't believe that this is what I'm doing, even if I've prepared for 8 hours that day before I've gotten on the set, right? And so that, and then I wonder, is that just me because I'm, but I'm 33, I've been doing this for a while, right? Do you still feel like that ever? Did you feel like that to a point, and how did you overcome it, if you've been able to?
Well, I absolutely still feel that way. I mean, there's still times where I'll feel, just a recent example, people will ask me to speak now. So I wrote this book, right? We spent 2 years writing it.
We were on the cover of the Atlantic.
We were on the cover of the Atlantic, thank you. Enormous amount of research, and people are very interested in this subject for young girls now. And so it's that people start to say, oh, come speak at this school. And my immediate reaction was, I don't know anything about girls, and I'm not an education expert. I couldn't possibly speak about that. And finally, somebody said to me, "What are you talking about? You know all of this research. You probably know more about this than anybody else." So it's a mindset I think I and many of us fall back on. But I found you will absolutely appreciate this example. So in the process of writing this book, because one of the things I found is that we've found in our research too, but I found personally is that I'm a perfectionist and a sort of an obsessive thinker, but perfectionism can really be the enemy of confidence. And so I didn't really understand the link between being a perfectionist and maybe not being willing to take risks and a lack of confidence. I just thought, well, that's the way I operate. I didn't view myself as having a real lack of confidence. But when I would appear on these political talk shows, I used to do This Week all the time. And I always had this sense that I wasn't talking as much as the guys. Right? That I would go in there, I was prepared. I mean, I was prepared for the subject, and I would really only say what I was absolutely prepared to say. The guys, they'd talk about one thing, then they'd veer off into something else, and I'd be thinking, of course, the way women think, I'm thinking, my God, they're talking about something else now, but I wonder what George Stephanopoulos is thinking, because he's probably thinking we're running short on time, and then the other person's not going to have enough time, and in my mind but I was only going to say what I was prepared to say, and I took a year's worth of the shows, and I added up my talk time compared to the guys, and I talked on average 30% less.
And these are those round tables, really important Sunday morning shows that everyone's watching,
Right.
and you really have to sort of be a bulldog in those and get in there for your time.
Well, and just the fact that it was self-limiting, right? I just realized suddenly, oh, well, not that I needed to talk maybe the guys were talking a little bit too much, possibly, but that I started to view that as just, I wasn't willing to take a risk and say something on another subject if I really didn't feel that I knew it. So, I mean, that's why, there are really endless examples, but those are
Has it
some
changed
more
for you,
recent.
knowing now what you know from all the research in this book? I mean, it's never foolproof, right? You're not just going to automatically, it's solved, but...
Yes, if you follow everything in our book, you will be transformed, because I am a new person. It has helped me a lot, because and we'll talk about some of it, but a lot, there's a lot of focus on how we can build our own confidence. Some of it has to do with getting used to risk-taking. Some of it has to do with stopping ruminating, which is something women do a lot more than men do. And I have found that part especially useful. Yeah. And I think just understanding some of the science behind it, understanding why we do what we do, just the awareness of it has made me stop. And when I'm doubting myself now, I'm able to say, wait, you probably are capable of this, or you probably don't need to think about this for another 10 days. You could probably just go ahead and make a decision. So yes, it's helped.
Let's talk about some of the examples, right? So Christine Lagarde at the IMF. This is an example you bring up right away in the book and get into. You sat down with Christine Lagarde, this incredibly striking, when I saw her at the World Economic Forum this year, you're just struck by her, right? And you think this is a woman who would never have a confidence problem. Tell me what she told you and who else, what other leading woman in this world has a problem, and how they get over it.
I know, I loved this example. So Caddy and I really we thought Christine Lagarde would be our leader and just lay out for us what we needed to do. And she is, she's more than 6 feet tall, she's elegant, she's French, so she's infuriatingly stylish too, which is just like, we walked away from the dinner with the thing I'm about to tell you, but the headline for both of us was, how did she get that scarf tied this certain way? It was so annoying. It was just sort of hanging there, and it wasn't moving, and she's really warm and friendly and very confident seeming, but she said to us, she said, here's how I think I lack confidence. I over-prepare for everything. Whatever's happening, I don't want to be caught off guard, so I prepare inside out, upside down, and roundabout. I just over-prepare. And then she paused and she said, Angela Merkel and I have compared notes on the way we both over-prepare. And Caddy and I thought, what?
The German, German chancellor, arguably the most powerful leader in Europe.
These two powerful women just comparing notes on over-preparing. And she's, we said, well, is there anything wrong with that? And she said, well, I think it's a sign of a lack of confidence, but B, it's exhausting. And I think that gets to another point, which is the more you're over-preparing, the less time you have to spend
living
on other things or living.
Well,
yes.
Yes. That really resonated with me because that's what I do. And I just didn't expect someone who had achieved such a high position to do the same thing. So I'd love to know more from you on that, if you do think there is a line to walk, because that's certainly what I do. Because I feel like if you look at the anchor desk, I have everything. I was filling in on the morning show last week, and the co-anchor, Chris Cuomo, said to me, you got everything highlighted there? Is there anything you don't have highlighted on your notes? And I've just got every topic highlighted and all my points, so whatever we cover, I've got it.
You're ready.
I didn't even look at them half the time, but I needed that. And I just wonder, I don't want to live like that always.
Let's talk. Let's talk. Yes.
I think for a lot of us, right? Do you do that for your tests and everything? Is there hope, and
yes.
How do you get better?
Well, I think that
First, what I think will help is to say that our definition of confidence, because I think this will help as we talk about what we can do to build it, I mean, it won't surprise you to know that academics don't always agree on what confidence is. All the experts have slightly, I mean, it took us a long time to get through this thicket. But one professor in particular helped us, not here, by the way, unfortunately, but at Ohio State, who really helped us pull together a definition, pull from a lot of them. Confidence is what turns our thoughts into action. So there's a real action component to confidence, and it has to, I guess the interesting thing about it to us was also there's a virtuous circle aspect to it as well, in that it's that process of taking risk and failing sometimes and struggling and ultimately mastering that creates confidence, right? So it's a process you go through, but there needs to be some struggle and so there's a risk-taking aspect to confidence as well. And I think that's where this idea of just being perfectly prepared for everything can sometimes be at odds with confidence, an expression of confidence, and certainly confidence building. Because what we learned is that you really have to be willing to take some risk and fail and learn from that failure to grow as a human being, but also just to build your confidence. And I think that what we see in so many women and young girls is just this desire to be perfect.
So you talk about that. You talk about the young girls and how we parent them, what we allow them to do, what we expect from young girls. And you've actually said we need to let them be more free and take many more risks.
Well, it was interesting. Carol Dweck actually said this because we looked at the science in terms of why men seem more confident than women to us, and why in fact at work our data shows they are more confident. But also what we were doing, and Carol Dweck said to us, look, if life were one long grade school, women would rule the world. But life is not one long grade school, and essentially what happens is that you can imagine from a very young age, girls are better able to sit quietly, color within the lines, get everything right, please people, be good. Emotionally, the way our brain is, our EQ, we are better able to do that. And very quickly, we're rewarded for that, because what adult does not like that behavior? Let's be realistic. I mean, parents, teachers, who doesn't like that? And before too long, we internalize all of that as one of the reasons why we're valuable. By high school, we might be full-blown perfectionists. And what are boys learning at the same time? I mean, they're really learning to screw up and to fail, and that they don't have to please people all the time, because that's what they do. And so they learn it's okay. I forgot my homework. I didn't do this. I didn't piss someone off. You learn from life's experience that that's not the end of the world. It's all right. And they're learning to fail and take risks. And what we realized is that with the help of a number of experts, that we can be excelling academically in high school and in college, and then suddenly, why does that screech to a halt? It's because it's a completely different set of rules. In the real world, you have to be willing to fail and take risks and not be perfect and just get things done and move on. And I think there's a real contrast sometimes to what we are learning in school as a way of behavior and what really works in the workplace.
And it's not even something in the curriculum per se. It's something that is just how parents parent oftentimes, right? And how teachers teach and what's expected. You talk about sports as being, we can set out the problems, but I also want to get to some of the solutions. So one of them is sports for young girls, right?
Well, a lot of the experts we talked with said that competitive sports is actually incredibly useful for confidence building, especially in girls, because what it's doing is offering those opportunities to fail a lot and lose a lot in a way that we're just not getting otherwise, because we don't naturally gravitate toward that sort of behavior. And so at least it's an arena in which we can experience it. But there are other ways to do it. I mean, especially for young girls, there's a new book out called Brave Girls, and the woman who wrote that book created a program taking middle school girls, because they found that middle school is a time when confidence can plummet for girls. And she created a program where girls learn to advocate on behalf of animal rights. And she picked animal rights because she's found, and the research shows, and by the way, it's often the same for grown women, women are motivated by very specific things. We will take risks when we feel passionately about something, but we're not going to do it often just to do it. And so she picked this issue that would really resonate with young girls, and then suddenly they're willing to speak out and take chances and really learn to do that over the course of 12 weeks. It's really interesting.
Can you talk about the Berkeley study about confidence versus competence?
Yeah, we almost did not want to include that in the book because it was a little depressing, but then we decided, well, we're journalists, we need to include it. Cameron Anderson is a professor at Berkeley who's been studying confidence versus competence, and he's found that in many cases in terms of success, traditional success, that confidence matters as much as competence, if not more than competence, which I found just really frightening. But he takes a group of students at the start of the semester, and he gives them a fake history test to determine who's overconfident. And it just has ringers on it, like Murphy's Last Ride or Queen Shattuck, and you're supposed to tick the historical events you recognize. Well, a lot of people are really well acquainted with these fake historical events, it turns out. And he follows those overconfident students for the year and finds, because they work in study groups and with other students, that at the end of the year, those are the students who tend to have more respect, or are more often thought of as leaders, have their ideas adopted by the group more often. I would say the only saving grace from our point of view was that he said the gap between your competence and confidence can't be too big, or you can have really disastrous consequences. Depending on your career, you could have really disastrous consequences. And also that confidence isn't fake, that it's not bravado, that it, because
the honesty component.
well, you can read, apparently he's also testing this, we can read fakes. Even if we don't know we're reading it, we can sniff out fakes really well. And so these are people who really believed that they're, and by the way, and Columbia has done this study, the Columbia Business School, that women tend to underestimate their performance on tests and almost everything we do. Men tend to overestimate their performance by about 30% on average. And the business school has a really interesting study. They call it honest overconfidence, and they studied this phenomenon.
So even Hillary Clinton is mentioned in the first few pages of the book, someone who's been in the headlines and will be for the next, I think it's 565 more
Yes.
days or something, until not that I'm counting. Talk about Hillary Clinton, and I'm also interested, to the extent that you're comfortable talking about it, how much you think this is going to play into this election if indeed she is even in the primary, and if she is the party's nominee, having a woman.
Well, it's interesting because for the last year, she's been talking a lot about some similar themes, especially about the need for women in public life to let criticism roll off of them more easily. And we heard that a lot from the WNBA coach we talked with, and we heard that from a variety of people. But I remember she told us about the fact that she almost didn't want to run for Senate, and it's a story she's told often, but that it was a women's basketball coach in New Jersey who told her, look, you have to take the chance. You have to take the chance of losing. And she was too terrified to lose. And so I think that's she's obviously toughened up. I think she now lets criticism roll off of her. But I do think it's going to be interesting for me just to see how that's an assessment that I think her whole team needs to take to heart, because they haven't in the past often dealt well with criticism and it being in that sort of arena, and I think that's going to be a challenge for her. But I don't know.
She has when you talk about the value, I mean, it seems like to me you're talking about the value of losing sometimes to grow more.
Right.
She lost the last time around.
Oh, yeah.
And perhaps that, will be a net benefit this time around, just in terms of growing.
I mean, look,
wonder.
she's had an enormous number of difficult experiences, and you can only imagine that she's grown from them. But I think that the campaign trail is running for office for women. It's one of the toughest arenas to get women to want to jump into, because there's, the research on it. It's like the ultimate test of whether we're likable and whether we're
we're it, whether we have what it takes. It's just an up or down vote, right? You win or you lose. And that can be really hard for women to take. I'm talking to women who try to convince more women to get into races. Men will often want to jump in without a lot of push. Women often really need to be pushed into it by people they really respect.
Let's talk about the science now. Because not only did they I had no idea science could play a part in this, genetics, but you and Caddy had your genes, basically, your DNA tested.
We did.
And you didn't want to open the results.
No,
for
we
a
didn't want to
while.
open the results. So we actually did not think we would find that confidence was genetic. We thought, look, we should delve into the science of confidence because that's the thing to do, right? Everybody's looking at the science of personality, and neuroscience is exploding, genetics is exploding. Let's just see what we find. And we talked to people who study confidence in rats, who knew there were confident rats, and anxiety-ridden
Do they
rats.
run after the
There are.
food more or something
They
like that?
make bad decisions. They sort of make bad decisions on their way to get food, yeah. It's complicated. And people studying confidence in monkeys. And look, what we found essentially from pulling together information from all of these experts is that there's a consensus that confidence is probably anywhere from 25 to 50% hereditary. So there's not one confidence gene. It's not there's a magic confidence gene and men have it and we don't. What they know right now is that there are 3 or 4 genes that there's certain variants of those genes that seem to affect confidence. And they're genes that affect neurotransmitters in our brain, things that regulate our serotonin levels or our dopamine levels, for example, our oxytocin levels. And if you have a certain variant of those genes, you're more or less likely to have a sort of natural level of confidence to start out with. So actually, as we started to discover this, Caddy and I, well, I should just say Caddy always gives me a hard time about this. I thought it would be a great idea to get our genes tested because I was really focused on the science part of the book, and I thought, this is going to be awesome, and it's not that hard to do it. And so I convinced Caddy. She wasn't paying a lot of attention. We spit into tubes. We sent it off. And then we both really thought, what have we done? We don't know if we want to know this information. And we did get the emails back, and neither of us really wanted to open them. We finally did. And we both, and forgive me to the scientists in this room because I'm really dumbing down the science here, but we're both essentially basket cases when it comes to our genetic confidence. We did not get the good confidence genes. And this, of course, because we're women, we felt like we'd failed a test and really had done something wrong.
You did not prepare enough for your spit.
We weren't perfect, exactly, we weren't perfect. Oh my God, our husbands were so tired of here this week. We spent together. But in the end, what we realized is that the other part of the science we were examining at that point that's so exciting and that illustrates why we can build our own confidence was really about brain plasticity. And that is just, I mean, the field of brain plasticity is unbelievable. They're realizing now that we can, with some fairly simple changes in the way we think or small changes in our habits, rewire our brains. Even at my age, I can rewire my brain. They see it now with the scans, right? They can give somebody 1 2-hour session of cognitive behavioral therapy who has a fear of spiders, watch his brain, scan his brain, and see that the next time he comes back, his amygdala, the fear center, is a completely different size. It's smaller. I mean, there's just less activity triggering the fear. It's incredible. And so when we say now, look, you can rewire your brain, you can change the way you think, you really can, and you can do it without a lot of work in some fairly permanent ways. And so long story short, we realized, okay, that must be what we've done, right? Because we're not still absolute basket cases. Over the years, we've built our confidence, not on purpose, just through life experience and by taking risks and doing things that we weren't thinking about, but that in fact have made us more confident women, if not perfectly confident.
Perfectly.
Perfectly confident, not really.
I'm totally fine. Perfect. I was sitting in a meeting the other day, a show rundown meeting, and after they say, here's what's in the show, sort of everyone goes around and says, here's my idea, right? And I noticed that a number of the women said, well, I'm sorry if you've already talked about this, or I'm sorry, but I just think that maybe, but it's okay if you don't want to do it. Prefacing the idea that they were good ideas with an apology. And I notice I do it too. And I started to sort of try to be a little different in emails and stop having to put like 10 smiley faces in them, or like say like, I'm really sorry to even ask this, or just by saying, here's what I'm thinking, 1, 2, 3, thanks. And someone told me last week that they felt like it was demanding. And I thought to myself, I wonder if they would think that same thing if it was coming from a man. I don't know, but it was interesting to me that I think a lot of times in our speech and our emails, personally, sometimes I feel like we have to apologize before saying what we think or what we ask.
You know, it's interesting to me because we did have a very fascinating conversation with a psychologist at the University of Michigan who studies optimism, and he was obsessed with what women often do, and he was seeing a lot in his young graduate students, the upspeak, which is turning every statement into a question. It drove him crazy, but he also realized that it was a way of trying to be inclusive, and it was an attempt not to seem demanding. It wasn't an attempt to sound like a valley girl. It was an attempt to just ingratiate ourselves and sort of say, without having to say, what do you think of that? Just putting a question mark at the end of it was softening whatever it is we say. And I think that, I will say this too about the science of confidence, because, by the way, the genetics, we didn't find a gender difference in the genetics I was talking about, but we found some interesting differences in the biology of the way our brains work that I think accounts for just a different attitude toward things, some of which means we want to put a lot of smiley faces in our emails. And so it's, testosterone, for example, is something men have 10 times more of than we do. That's a huge boost for risk-taking. That tends to prime, there's an enormous amount of data that shows that higher testosterone levels are associated with more risk-taking behavior. And it's not that men look at risk and say, that's a crazy risk, I want to do it. It's that it gives us a different way of assessing risk, the different hormones that we have. There's a part of our brain, for example, that scientists have dubbed the worrywart center. And it seems to help us scan the horizon looking for threats or problems or things that we see that are off. It's physically bigger in the female brain than it is in the male brain. We operate more in the prefrontal cortex. We have more matter there that we rely on, which is the home of caution, rational thought, reason. There's all sorts of scans now that illustrate that, yes, we do have this multitasking part of our brains. There's scans that show we seem to have more neurons firing in our brains at any given moment than the male brain does. And so a lot of people are like, oh, see, our brains are more active, they're better. But scientists also think that might be the physical manifestation of what women do more than men, which is ruminate and think and overthink, which can be really detrimental to taking action and to confidence. So, I think part of that, yes, is not great business behavior, but I also think part of that is that we have all these antennae out in the world, and we really do have higher emotional EQ, and we feel, when I say this person's going to think that. When I say this person's going to think that. And so to some extent, it's natural. We just have to figure out when it's useful and when it really does not come across well.
And to the young women in this room, do you think that there is something to be said for watching that and not feeling like you have to apologize before you put an idea out there or preface it with just?
I think that it's very important to think about when we're apologizing for something, when we're using upspeak. It's hard to get a grip on it because we all do it so much. There's a really amazing video that I think it's a Pantene video that strings together all the times women say, I'm sorry, and apologize for something. Look for it online. It's just, and I was horrified because I thought, I do that all the time. I walk through a door, I say, I'm sorry. I take a seat, I say, I'm sorry. It's just, why do I do that all the time?
Exactly.
It does not, but I think we also, it's true that at a certain point, until everybody starts to get used to this new behavior, sometimes maybe it will seem demanding, but I just think at a certain point we have to try to adjust and take some of the flack for it and then people will get used to it.
There was also an interesting point that Christine Lagarde made to you guys about talking to a president of another nation who's a woman, and the lesson learned was don't make the mistake of trying to act like a man, right? Which is important when you're talking about confidence and men versus women. Still be yourself.
That was one of the most important things we learned. I think Christine Lagarde said this to us. It was a great story where she gave an anecdote about a woman leader of a third world country she was advising, because there aren't that many people you can turn to for advice when you're a new female leader, but Christine Lagarde is one of them, and she had just decided to cut the presidential motorcade in half, the size of it, because the country was hemorrhaging money, couldn't afford it, and she thought, we're not going to waste all this money. I don't need 10 cars, 5 are fine. But she was getting a lot of flack, even from her supporters. You don't look presidential. Why are you doing this? And Christine Lagarde told her, no, hold the line. You should do this, dare the difference. You need to not only do it, but you need to own it, because you feel strongly about it. You need to make this an asset. And she talked a lot about how we don't want to risk putting on someone else's armor all the time in our pursuit of confidence, that it's important to be authentic, that we have all these things that make us unique are things actually that, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, contribute to the bottom line of companies, make us valuable assets. So we don't want to lose those as we try to figure out what confidence is. And that actually led us to what was a breakthrough to some extent, which is understanding that what we often think of as confident behavior is actually often just male behavior, right? It's a very Mad Men style, kind of macho, who's going to talk first in the meeting, who's going to say this, who's going to stand up first. That's a way of behaving. That's not necessarily confident behavior. That confident behavior can look a lot of different ways. Confident behavior might be quiet. There's confident listening. We had a lot of interesting talks with Valerie Jarrett at the White House about the need to listen and then analyze and be the person who's not speaking first but actually speaking last and pulling things together. And so I mean, that's why as we listed these ingredients in our confidence code, authenticity was really one of them, because we came to realize that we don't want to play the imitation game, I guess.
And it talks about in the book sort of confidence code. Well, there is sort of a test you can take, and it's sort of being a blueprint for taking action on this. Before we wrap up, I would like to get some of the questions in from some of the people here and other people that wrote into us. So this question came in. I'm a mom of a 3-year-old. In person, in online conversations, and on social media, I see so many other mothers doubt themselves in parenting decisions, express feelings of guilt even for making perfectly reasonable choices, and overall put way too much stock in other people's opinions. I can't imagine this is all a result of social pressure. Any insight into what's going on?
You know, I think that, I want to come back to this point of ruminating, because this was the second point we talk about in what we can do to really build confidence in ourselves. And this is just a classic example of just overthinking and doubting. I think I had my worst ruminating episode recently. Well, God, it's not even that recently anymore, but as the book was coming out, and you can very much appreciate this, Poppy. So I was feeling guilty because I was working on the book and I was supposed to be doing things for World News as well.
Sure.
But I hadn't been doing as much for World News, so I thought, well, I better update Diane Sawyer on this project. I send her an email, and 2 hours goes by, and I don't hear back.
Oh, it just
so
kills
my
me.
mind is starting to spin, and I'm thinking,
Maybe they don't want me on the show.
Right,
Oh
yes.
my God, I'm never going to have a piece
Thank
on
you.
air
See,
again.
you could, exactly. Diane Sawyer's mad at me. She knows I'm working on this book, and I'm not working on the show. And then another 2 hours goes by, I kid you not, and I think all of ABC News is
I'm
mad
fired.
at me. Right,
Fired.
right. Or
Boxes
they're
in my
meeting right
office.
now about me. The whole company is meeting, and they're gonna, and by the next day I am thinking maybe I should check in with my agent, see if he's heard anything, all because, so this is the ruminating,
Totally.
I mean, or we all do it, we get a review and all we focus on is the one
Bad thing.
bad thing that we could just put aside, whatever it is. But what we can do about it, it's so simple. It's not easy, but it's very straightforward. So we have to become aware of that voice in our heads, and then it's basic cognitive behavioral therapy. you become your own sort of public defender voice in your head, and you come up with a reasonable explanation. And what I love about the research is it doesn't even have to be actually all that reasonable. It just can be any explanation, as it turns out. Diane Sawyer just got back from a trip to Africa, so she's not going to email me, or she tends to email me on the weekends, or the show's on the air in 2 hours. Whatever it is, you'll see, if you start to give that explanation, it stops the cycle.
Yep.
So we do it, and this has been the single biggest revelation to me in writing this book, is how many women come up and say, oh my God, the ruminating, the obsessive thinking, the overanalysis. I really did think I might, my sister and I thought we were the only ones who did it. And it's just getting a grip on that allows us to stop it and move on. So I would just say
I do it all the time, all the time.
It's something we all do. It's not unusual, I would say to the questioner.
But you can stop it.
Yes.
What advice, this was a good one. What advice do you have for the naturally introverted woman? Often the typical expression of confidence is tied to the idea of being outgoing, friendly, and extroverted. What are ways to exhibit confidence while still being true to your personality?
That's a great question, because I've realized in the course of doing research for this book, I've come to realize I'm an introvert. So I've always known that to some extent, because speaking with big crowds can not only be intimidating, but exhausting. It can really, but I started to do a lot of research into introverts. I thought, oh my God, I can't believe I have a career in TV broadcasting, and now I'll just go around speaking to people, and I'm an introvert. This is insane. And what I found is that I think it's important for all of us, because often it's about introverts, but it's also about a different style of confidence sometimes for a lot of women, right? It might be about introversion, or it might just be that we want to display our power or confidence in a different way. That it's important to be very transparent with whether it's your colleagues, your bosses, whomever it is. So you don't, if you really feel that your strength is not necessarily going to be speaking first at the meeting or taking control in that way, decide what your strength really is. Whether is it going to be summarizing? Is it going to be doing something else? And be transparent about that. Make a point of saying, this is how I think I'm valuable. This is why I'm choosing to act this way. And try to start to have a conversation about that instead of just assuming, either hiding and hoping nobody notices, or assuming people are going to figure it out. I think it's really important to try to start conversations about this. And honestly, we had so many interesting conversations with the Amazon has an entire policy now. I didn't realize this, but they'd realized that so many of their employees are incredibly brilliant and introverts, and that having classic traditional meetings
doesn't work for them.
Well, it wasn't yielding the best result for the company. So they have a policy now where they sit around a table when there's going to be a presentation, and it's a written presentation. It's always 6 pages. It's very standardized. Everybody sits and reads it.
Yeah.
And you sit and you read. It might be an hour. Everybody's sitting around the table reading, and then it's just Q&A.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes you might need to be an instigator in coming up with some different ways to participate.
This question is about the results of the confidence survey and the sort of what you found the correlation was between confidence level and age, confidence level and personal income, confidence level and occupation. Any interesting findings there?
We are starting to get that data, and they're trying to figure out what it means. So it's preliminary, I will tell you. But right now, it does look like there's some correlation between age and confidence. So women seem to gain confidence as we get older. The men's confidence level seems to remain more steady. There's a link between income and confidence level, but the professors aren't sure, and we're trying to figure out how to figure that out.
Which came first.
Right, exactly. So, and we have interesting data on ethnicity, so we need a bigger sample size to some extent, but right now in our sample of American women, African American women are more confident than white women, who are more confident than Asian women. So, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things we want to follow up on.
That means the second book is coming. Definitely. We have 2 minutes, so I see right here, before I let you go, I do want to ask for the Columbia women here, for myself as a Columbia grad, what did Columbia give you?
Oh, the trick question. I don't know. I think that Columbia gave me, Columbia forced me to stretch. And I think really, and I'm glad you asked that because I wanted to make plain that actually learning to stretch and step outside of our comfort zone, that's the number one thing we can do to build confidence. Learn to take risks, start small, et cetera. But when I look back on it, living in New York and the Columbia I came to is not the Columbia of today. Again, no housing, find your own way around. I mean, it was really like, New York at its most primal.
Right.
And then Columbia at a pretty basic level too, but the core curriculum and taking, again, I stumbled into this place. I was clearly, it was not well planned, but it forced me to really stretch and take a lot of chances and do some failing, which I wasn't used to, and then grow from it. And so I think that it just gave me the sense that I could keep going.
Yeah.
And that was probably the most valuable lesson for me.
It's a good stretch yourself. I always say my biggest regret here at Columbia was not taking Arabic because I thought I would fail. I should have taken it pass fail, kept my GPA up, and I would have really helped me in my reporting career over the last 10 plus years to have learned Arabic, so take Arabic. Claire Shipman, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Claire and Poppy. It was really a wonderful and very insightful conversation, and we appreciate you coming here tonight for our inaugural CCW event.
Thanks for having us.
So we did want to just present you with these
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
gifts.
Thank you. That's very sweet. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
It was terrific,
I
thanks.
think we all have taken away something from this conversation. And I want to thank everybody for coming here tonight. We appreciate you making the effort in the weather, and we hope that this is just the beginning of some new engagement with CCW. We have a new vision, a new infrastructure, and we think it's the start of something really wonderful for the college. And I'd like now to introduce the Metrotones, who we have to close our program with a couple of songs. So thank you again. And lastly, I just want to give a special thank you to Kim Diamond for all of her
Yes.
help. And
Thank you,
bringing us
Kim.
together.
Hi everyone. So we're the Columbia Metrotones. We're the all-female songs for you, so hope you enjoy. Listen to the wind blow, watch the sun rise. Run in the shadows, damn your love, damn your lies. And if you don't love me now, you'll never love me again. I can still hear you saying you would never break the chain. Never break the chain. Listen to the wind blow, down comes the night. Run in the shadows, damn your love, damn your lies. Break the silence, damn the dark, damn the light. And if you don't love me now, you'll never love me again. I can still hear you saying he would never break the chain. And if you don't love me now, you'll never love me again. I can still hear you saying he would never break the chain. Never break the keep us together, Roche. Keep us together, Roche. Keep us together, Roche. Keep us together, Roche. Listen to the wind blow.